Oh, yeah. Five-star. LSU. I said, they ain't ready for the LSU. No, they ain't ready for the LSU, huh? They ain't ready for the LSU. No, they ain't ready for the LSU. We the best in the league if you looking for talent. LSU going hard, but we beat Alabama, then we going out to Florida. Drown the Gators, everybody getting bucked when we step in the stadium. This the LSU anthem, you know it's a hit. You don't know another rapper two-step like this. See me screaming out the window, yelling purple and gold. I'm an LSU fan, girl, you know how we roll now. Back and back it on up. Hey, 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 way down in the back.
TA, we are live. Welcome into the Tigers Avenue Show, Monday edition, following the Nicholls State victory for the LSU Tigers. Monday Night Football is going on. The Jets are playing the 49ers. I hope all of your fantasy teams are doing what they should and dominating and winning. I know mine is. I'm already got the lead, and I have the only significant player left in Aaron Rodgers. Pretty confident that I'll seal the deal. Hope your Monday has been going great. We're here to discuss, recap, give all of our thoughts on the Nicholls State game and all that transpired in it. And obviously, we got to talk about some injuries. Obviously, a very key injury to the LSU's defensive line. We'll talk about that and kind of our thoughts on that moving forward and what it's going to look like, maybe who to expect to be there, and some other guys as well, and some shakeup in the defense, not just on the defensive line, some other things that are going to be happening there. And then we'll talk about some things that we think, LSU needs to improve on. Obviously, LSU is not a perfect team. And there are clearly things that need to make strides, and we will obviously discuss those things and give our thoughts on those as well. So hope you've had a great weekend. Obviously, the Tigers win. That always makes it better. So the deal is, though, that everyone is not quite pleased with the way LSU wins. Here, Zach, here's my take on that. I just think to talk about the way a team won is utter hogwash. I just think it is. I think it's garbage. Like that sentiment. I think there is some value to it at times, but I think context is always important as well. And
yeah,
there's times when you see things and you're like, okay, that was as the infamous Jermaine Funny Man Johnson says, it was a struggle win, right? Struggle win, and you see things like, clearly like Alabama was struggling against South Florida. Oregon really, really struggled with Boise State.
They've struggled the last 2 weeks.
Right. And then we see last weekend, South Carolina struggles with who did they?
Old Dominion.
Old Dominion. Thank you. I almost said Charleston. Old Dominion, and then they turn around and they beat the dog out of Kentucky.
Yeah.
My point is, and even Brian Kelly has made this point because it's already a point of discussion how a team wins. I feel that every game is absolutely different. And is there things that need to be critiqued from this game? Absolutely. And we're going to. We are absolutely going to. But there is always context that matters into a game. Do I think the Tigers struggled in some things? Yes. But the goal of the game is what? To win the stinking game. And then you move forward, right? You move on to the next week. You improve on what you can improve on, and you move to the next week. Zach, as Brian Kelly made mention, and he, of course, he said he's not making excuses. This team goes to Las Vegas, plays a Sunday night game, loses a heartbreaker, gets back at 5 a.m. on Monday morning. The week is off, and they're fatigued, and they weren't at their best. Is that an excuse? Yes, I would say an excuse. But is it also somewhat a reality? I think it is. There's no excuse to struggle against Nicholls State. But the reality is these guys are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And a heartbreaker last week and then a quick turnaround this week with a different schedule than what they're used to. It seemed like it showed. It showed. And, of course, they were banged up a little bit and got banged up in the game some. And I think, obviously, that played a factor into that as well. So context always matters. The goal is to win, and you won. With that being said, Zach, the game itself did not appease fans, obviously. Coming off of a loss against USC, a close loss, and then turning and pivoting to a Nicholls State team, you wanted to dominate them. Every fan wanted to just steamroll over them to feel a little bit better. Well, look, it didn't happen. So fans aren't going to be happy. But you won the game. You got to move on. You had a tough, hard-fought loss, and you looked really, really good. In my opinion, you looked good in the loss, and you should have won the game against USC. And then, of course, I think we see a little bit of the aftermath of a tough loss, a schedule that's off for the week. You struggle with Nicholls State a little bit. It's not going to appease the fans. It's not going to. But each week, I think you have to take differently. It's just a different team. It's a different mindset. They're showing different fronts. They're schematically different. Their personnel is different. Like, you just can't compare one week as like, this is one, this is two. Like, it's the exact same thing because it's just not. It's not. And it's ignorant to act like each game it's going to look the same, if that makes sense. Anyways, that's my initial, Zach, thought on this is that fans are like, oh, crap, we lost, and now we're struggling with Nicholls State. We really, really suck. Like, I just don't buy that. I don't buy that. You played a lot of stinking young guys on Saturday. You rotated guys in a lot on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
You had true freshmen score 2 of your touchdowns. True freshman, Trades Green, Lord have mercy. Golly, these animations. Trades Green scored you a touchdown. Jawan Johnson, his first game at running back, by the way, moved to the position. He scores a touchdown. You have freshmen that are now playing on the defensive side. Deshaun Spears got a lot of play. PJ Woodland got a lot of play. Like you're seeing
Zy Alexander worked his way back.
Yes, Zy Alexander worked his way. You see that a game like this, and there were injuries, like they're working guys in. They're moving guys around. They're getting guys reps in a game where you know you're going to win. Would you have rather than pulled away early? Yes, you'd have rather than pulled away earlier. But regardless, they still did it. They pulled away in the third quarter, put the game to bed. You move on. You move on. You were playing without Garrett Dellinger. You obviously played the majority of the game without Jacoby and Gilroy. You rotated a bunch of freshmen in. You got them a bunch of reps. You won the game, guys. And you won the game by 23 points. Like, was it pretty? No. But the object of the game is to win the game. And I'm so glad that, like, it's like we have no recollection of the history of sports when things like this happen. We act like it's the first time it's ever happened in the history of sports that a superior team has struggled with an inferior team. Like, we're quick to forget LSU was really, really struggling with Grambling last year, and you had the Heisman quarterback as your quarterback. Like, going into half, it was a lot closer than you wanted it to be, just like this game.
Yeah.
And you still won 10 games that season. And your quarterback won the Heisman. Guys, Garrett Nussmeier leads the country in touchdown passes right now. Like, let's not overreact over, like, God, we're so obnoxious sometimes. Like, let the season play out before you determine the rest of the season. Let it play out. If it continues to look the same, if you go to South Carolina this weekend and you get your block knocked off, like, yeah, maybe you're not as good as a team. But let's not overreact over a game where it didn't look pretty, but you won the game by 23 points against an inferior opponent. 2011, one of the most prolific LSU teams in history, aside from the 2019 team. Aside from the 2019 team, 2011 was the greatest LSU team ever that did not win a national championship.
Yeah.
They played, oh gosh, who was it? I'm drawing a blank. I can't remember who they played, but they went against an opponent like this, and they went to half, and it was 14-7 LSU. Like, it happens. It happens sometimes.
Was it Western Kentucky or Northwestern State?
Western Kentucky, that's who it was. You go to half, and it's 14-7 against the 2011 Tigers, who played in the national championship, who went undefeated in the regular season. My point is, just chill out and let them play out the next game. They just got done losing a game, a season opener against USC, big-time, primetime game, ABC, Sunday night. They literally lost it with 8 seconds on the clock. It was a tied game with 18 seconds to go, and they lost it. Okay? And then they turned around and had an off schedule. They were not their normal selves, and clearly it was not their best performance. They played way better against USC than they did against Nicholls State.
Yeah, they did.
And we know that. So I'm not trying to be Mr. Positive, okay? But it sickens me to see the overreaction, the overreactions sometimes. It just bothers me. It just does. So that's my initial reaction to the overreaction. But, Zach, obviously it wasn't a clean game. So, Zach, what were your thoughts on somewhat of a sloppy game for LSU against Nicholls?
Yeah, well, I mean, my point to make, you kind of alluded to it, but a lot of people, I don't think they recognized it, but in a lot of these games, you see the starters come out, they'll play the first half, they'll dominate, and then, they'll throughout the third quarter and into the fourth quarter, you see the rotation begin and you see the young guys get in. That was not the case with this game. With this game, the rotation and the early and the young talent getting brought in, it started from the very start of the game. So that's the first thing that you have to realize is typically in these games you see, and a lot of the outside world, a lot of the people that don't watch the game and don't follow LSU as closely are going to look at it and go, oh my God, LSU struggled. And yes, they did struggle, but they're not going to realize that we rotated in all of the young talent early on in the game. Like at the very beginning of the game, we were rotating in young. I mean, obviously Garrett Nussmeier was still in the game, and your starting offensive line was still in the game. But on defense, a lot of young guys because they're still trying to figure out who can play, who's going to be our guys when we need them the most on the defensive side of the ball. And then obviously you still had some young pieces at wide receiver. Shelton Sampson was playing early on. I mean, you had Jawan Johnson, who hasn't played offense at all in his LSU career. His early LSU career hasn't practiced for that in the offseason as a freshman, and they're thrusting him into this role as a rotational back. So yes, while I do agree that I think LSU fans do have a bone to pick with it being as close as it was. Again, you have to understand the context. Another thing is, I don't know if you mentioned it, Reagan, but how up for you are, I mean, how as a college athlete, a young 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old, how much are you getting up for this game after you just came from Vegas and went up against USC? You're not. Like you got your gut punched, and all the hype going in, and I mean you're not going to be as up to play Nicholls at home. You're not going to have the motivation. The motivation is going to come this weekend when you go to South Carolina. So I agree with you. Let's wait to see what they do this weekend versus South Carolina. If they get punched in the mouth, and they lose this game to an opponent who I feel like they're, I don't want to say head and shoulders better than, but they're a better team, talent wise overall. You look at the matchups, they're just better. They're a better team, and we'll get into that on Thursday. They're a better team in a lot of different areas. You have an anemic offense in South Carolina. You have a really bad secondary, similar to LSU. South Carolina's secondary really, really struggling. The strength of the South Carolina team is their front seven. And the strength of LSU's offense is the passing game. Yeah. So I think you have a favorable matchup this weekend. Let's see what it looks like whenever they're going to be amped up and hyped to go to have a college game day, 11 a.m. start.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, that is crazy to me. I don't know.
Game of the week?
I mean, there's really nothing else. There really is nothing else if you go look at it. So, I mean, I'm just being honest. Like, there's certain things I don't get up for. Like there was certain whenever I was in high school and whenever I was, I know this is going to, oh my gosh, this is going to sound so lame. But, when I was playing disc golf in college, there were certain games that I just, was like, okay, like we're going to go play this team. Like, here we go. When we went and played A-State, who was a national champion in disc golf, like we got up for that. Like we were hyped. Like we're going to go in here. Now, did it turn out as well as we thought? No, but we got up for it, compared to, like when we went and played a no-name team that we knew we were going to beat. Like that's just how it is in college. Like, and you can say, oh, well, they should get up for everything. They're college kids. And yes, the coaches are going to coach them too, but you can't control their emotions. Like you can teach emotion. You can encourage and try to hype up your players, but ultimately it's going to come down to them. And I know a lot of people are going to hear this and be like, well, they should get up for every game. Again, they're college kids. And considering what happened last weekend, I completely understand why they, A, wouldn't be up for this game. B, I mean, why would you feel like LSU has struggled so mightily against Nicholls State when you actually look at what they were doing with all the rotational pieces in the first half, in the first quarter, at the beginning of the game? So, yes, I will say, like, I was a little frustrated. I mean, yes, I was frustrated, but I wasn't going, oh, my God. Like, What are we? We're gonna go 7-5. Oh God! I know. I mean, we could go 7-5. Let's see what happens this weekend. But I'm not gonna overreact to that game. And if you look at the context of that game, I'm not gonna overreact to that because what I'm more gonna be concerned about is if they do that versus South Carolina. They do that versus South Carolina. Then next week when we come out on Monday, I'll be up here going, yeah, it's looking like this is going to be a long season. But I'm not going to do that right now against Nicholls State when you consider the context. Yeah. With that being said, Reagan, I really liked what I saw from a lot of the young guys. I really liked what I saw. And considering how quick of a turnaround it was for Juwan Johnson to be able to come out and have the game that he had on Saturday night was really impressive. And I really feel like he is a type of player that could replace a John Emery type player, home run hitter, playmaker, can make the cuts, speed. Juwan Johnson could be that guy that is a good replacement for John Emery. Right, I kind of think about. I know he wasn't utilized a whole lot, but I kind of think of Trey Bradford like that. That kind of made me feel like when I was watching Juwan Johnson. Maybe it was because he's wearing number 8. I don't know, but it kind of made me feel like Trey Bradford there. Like has the ability to hit a home run. Really good at catching the ball out of that backfield. But Juwan Johnson is just an athlete, right? Quarterback, broke all kinds of records in high school. Wanted to transition to DB, but when you go look at his high school film, dude made plays. I mean, he's an athlete, right?
Yep.
Not a quarterback really necessarily at the college level, but just a guy that can make plays. He's a playmaker. Yep. And offensively, you need that at running back because you just haven't seen it right now out of Caleb Jackson and out of Josh Williams. So really encouraged by that. Holy cow, what a game did Kyron Lacey and Garrett Nussmeier had. I mean, as you mentioned, Garrett Nussmeier leads the nation in touchdowns. He had 6 in this game, which is just insane with as much as, they struggled. 6 touchdowns. Kyron caught 3 of them. Kyron battled injury and getting nicked up the whole game and yet still scored 3 touchdowns. CJ Daniels looked good. I know he didn't have a touchdown, but 70-something. I think he had 71 yards or something. He looks really good. I really feel like they can get him going. Holy cow, LSU has a return game again with Xavier Thomas.
Xavier Thomas is a real threat, dude.
I can't remember who put it out. I think it was either Hunt Palmer. I can't remember exactly who put it out. It might have been Hunt Palmer or somebody else. So if it was somebody else, forgive me. But in 2022, through the entire season, they were. I can't remember how many kicks they returned, but it was like 86 total yards on the returns. And then last year was like 70-something total yards, 72 or something like that, or 74 on returns. And this year already you have 80, 81 or 82 yards returning just through 2 games. So it's crazy the difference that a good returner makes. And Xavier Thomas is going to be able to definitely affect some games this year with his ability to return the football in the punt game.
No doubt.
And in kickoff game. So really excited to see that. PJ Woodland, I mean, holy cow. I know you didn't get to see it live, Reagan. Maybe you got to see a replay or something like that. But PJ Woodland, I mean, was pretty much stride for stride with the receiver that caught the ball, but didn't give up on the play. Receiver caught the ball, arm around, punches the ball out, and recovers his own fumble. I mean, what a play. What a play. Not to give up. How many times have we seen that out of a DB in the last 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4 years? Yeah, you've hardly seen it at all out of a DB in the last 4 years. And PJ Woodland just seems like he's a guy. Zy Alexander, as I mentioned earlier, worked his way back and looked really good. In fact, was the highest rated Pro Football Focus was the highest rated player in the game. Wow. Out of any player in the game. For LSU. So that was just
it's gonna be really good to have him back.
And I know you're going to talk about that a little bit more with Zy Alexander working his way back and some comments that Brian Kelly made. But look, overall, I think, yes, while it was disappointing to see them struggle in the first half, and I will say this. One of the things that I was most disappointed about was the rushing attack. And that continues to kind of be a theme so far through the first two games here. We'll see how it progresses and if it gets better and if they're able to be more dominant on the offensive line as far as getting push for this rushing attack. But to only have, 60 or 50 something yards versus Nicholls, that sucked. But again, context matters. And if you listen to Brian Kelly, he mentioned that there was multiple times where they checked out of a run play because Nicholls had stacked the box. They had stacked the box. And so Garrett Nussmeier checked out of it. Yeah. Right? I know a lot of people. It's the right call. It's the right thing to do. I mean, if you've got an advantage on the outside with your receivers because Nicholls is stacking the box, they're putting, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 guys in the box, then the right move is to check out of it and go to a pass play where you've got playmakers on the outside and Kyron Lacey and C.J. Daniels and Xavier Thomas and Aaron Anderson. The receiver room is obviously the most impressive, been the most impressive unit to me so far. This year, and it just obviously that continues
its full potential, dude.
And it's not even as full potential because you don't have Chris Hilton yet, and hopefully you get Chris Hilton. Yes, and Kyle Parker. So Kyle Parker's been down, Chris Hilton's been down. We'll talk about injuries here in a little bit, but that conversation kind of leads us into our next segment. So overall, to wrap up, I don't know if you got anything else to say about the game, Reagan, but. It sucked to see Guggenheimer, whatever the heck his name was, go completely off.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great game. Kid from Baton Rouge that just wanted to play at LSU and played his tail off in this game for Nicholls and looked phenomenal. I thought the defense didn't look terrible. They weren't great, but I didn't think they looked terrible. They had the one big play that was a 6-7 yarder right out of the half. Then after that, it was complete shutdown dominance for the most part in the second half. Yeah. The big thing with the first half was that Nicholls did a really good job of playing keep away. They had 2 drives that were over 7 minutes long, one that was almost 8 minutes at 7:59. Yeah. You're talking an entire quarter. Nicholls was able to keep the ball for an entire quarter in the first half. And that's why you didn't see LSU pull away, right? That's why you didn't see LSU have the opportunity to stack scores on top of one another because Nicholls was playing keep away. And yes, the defense struggled with being able to get them off the field, get the Nicholls offense off the field. But Nicholls did a really good job executing and was able to play keep away. And that's why you saw what you saw in the first half. But eventually, obviously, in the second half, the defense was able to settle in after that 67-yard touchdown run to start the second half, and they were able to lock in, and no scores after that. I mean, no scores the rest of the third quarter, no scores the rest of the fourth quarter, and the offense was able to get going and look phenomenal with Garrett Nussmeier and Kyron Lacey leading the way. So, yes, a frustrating game, but context-wise, I personally think there was more to be excited about moving forward with PJ Woodland playing the way that he's been playing, with Zy Alexander coming back and looking good, with Juwan Johnson making his debut on the offensive side of the ball and getting a touchdown, with Kyron Lacey and Garrett Nussmeier looking like a really, really unstoppable almost unstoppable duo, quarterback wide receiver duo for this team, and other receivers like Xavier. I mean, there's a lot of positives to look at. We tend to look at the negative. I promise you, Reagan, if LSU beats USC last weekend, we don't have all this conversation of, oh gosh, they're struggling, yada yada yada. It would be a lot more conversation of, we played a lot of young guys.
Correct.
short turnaround. Like the fan base would be a lot more understanding if LSU had beaten USC last weekend. They got up for USC. It was a hard fought game, short week, all those different things. But winning makes everything better, right? And when you lose a game like you did against USC, it makes the way that the game played out against Nicholls exacerbated. And that's what the fans are going to do. And again, look, Reagan said it. We're not sunshine pumpers, right? I mean, we literally came on here last week and told all of y'all that LSU was going to lose to USC. We all predicted LSU was going to lose to USC. So I'm not sitting here saying like we're trying to be sunshine pumpers because we perceived the Nicholls game a little bit differently. I'm just saying, look into the context of the game, understand what happened last weekend and how it affects young men and young players, and then consider that, right? Yeah. And consider all the young players that played so early in the game, and then let's see what happens this weekend versus South Carolina.
Yep.
And then make a judgment, right? I'm going to make a judgment based on what this team looks like going on the road, college game day versus South Carolina at 11 a.m. this upcoming Saturday. That's when I'm going to really judge this team, right? And we know now that there's some things that are being altered, some personnel changes on the defensive side of the ball that I think a lot of people will be pleased with and that will be happy with.
Yep.
So let's see how that looks, right? Before we come to a conclusion that this season is going to be terrible, LSU is going to lose 4 to 5 games. Like, let's see how that looks.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the point of the USC game, you're in critique mode now. You lost the season opener 3 years in a row. Everybody's in critique mode. If LSU puts together a few good games here against South Carolina, then UCLA, South Alabama, and then we have a bye week and we're going to Florida, play Ole Miss in Death Valley, and we're 4-1, and we've improved over these things. Everybody's going to be like talking about how LSU could pull off the upset again. I mean, that's how things go. Anyway,
let's get to some comments, Reagan, real quick before we transition here, and I'll let you talk about a few things. Caleb Owens, obviously the very diehard Florida fan, said the thing is every team you said is FBS except Nicholls State.
That's not true.
Caleb, let's try to compete against Miami week 1 before we start drawing conclusions.
Since Idaho is not an FBS team.
Yeah, and let's figure out who the quarterback is at Florida and if Billy Napier is going to make it through the season before we start worrying about LSU. I would worry about Florida right now before you worry about LSU.
I would
just saying.
I would also say DJ Lagway's the guy.
Yeah, DJ Lagway is the guy. He's good.
Lagway is the guy.
Tyler Townsend said, "What's up?" Oh, Danny Girl said the true frustration was playing down to a weaker opponent. Doing that against weaker SEC teams will cost him. The problem is, Danny, they're not going to do that versus weaker SEC. They're not going to have this idea of playing down or not getting up versus SEC teams. That's my opinion. And I mean, we can sit here and say all day long, well, they should be up for those games. It shouldn't matter who they're playing. They should be. They are young college men, and if I'm an LSU football player, and I'm playing I'm playing USC week 1, Ole Miss week 6 or 7, I'm worried about those. I mean, I'm going to be more looking forward to those games than I am to playing Nicholls. I'm just being honest. I mean, and I think that's anybody. Like, you don't go into a season going, man, I just can't wait till we play Nicholls. I can't wait to play them. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, you had former players themselves tell you that. You had former players themselves. T-Bob Hebert on if you watch Whiskey and Wine, which if you do, just fair warning, not safe for work, not safe for your kids. But if you watch Whiskey and Wine, T-Bob Hebert told you that straight up after the game against Nicholls. Like, you're not as up for those games. You're just not. You're going to be up for the SEC games. So that's the point we're trying to make, Danny Girl.
I also want to point out Brian Kelly will tell you he's telling you without specifically saying it, but like Garrett Dellinger and probably even Chris Hilton might play in that game if it's not Nicholls.
Oh yeah.
In fact, Garrett Dellinger would have played in that game
if it wasn't
not the opponent that it was. So
correct.
That also tells you the mindset going into that game. Like, let's stay healthy. Let's get healthy. Let's win the game and move on. Because that game, I'm telling you right now, nobody's going to be talking about the way we played the game against Nicholls if we're 4-1 and we're about to play Ole Miss in Death Valley. No. Nobody will talk about it. Nobody. And let's even say we pull off a couple good wins. Let's say we lose to Ole Miss, but we beat Alabama and we finish the season 10-2, 9-3. Nobody will talk about the way that we played Nicholls. Nobody.
Correct.
It just does not matter. It doesn't. It doesn't matter. So I get the worry. I get it, but it does not matter. It really don't. Anyway,
Seabold is in here. One of my good buddies from back at college. He said, "What's up, Zach?" He said, "Louis," which obviously Reagan, I know you know who Louis is. Louis said, "Arky is beating y'all this year." It could very well happen
in Fayetteville.
It's in Fayetteville. Arkansas definitely looks much improved this year. I know they had a really. I know they had a really close loss this past weekend, which was brutal because I was rooting for them. But yeah, I definitely that's definitely a huge trap game for LSU. It's a huge trap game for LSU. Arkansas, but I will say Arkansas, I really felt like if they were going to get potentially 7 or 8 wins, or they had to beat Oklahoma State. So we'll see. But by the way, Tyler Seabolt is a huge Texas fan. Has been. He's not a bandwagoner. He's been a Texas fan.
I'm tell you
and
what,
they're good, bro. They're really good.
Best chance Texas has had to win a national championship in a long time.
Yeah.
With the way college football is this year, the field of teams this year.
The field's down. The field is down.
I'm darn near close to saying Texas is my favorite to win.
Yeah, I would, in my opinion, I would say that Texas and Ole Miss are the best looking teams right now.
My best 4 right now, my best 4 teams are Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, and Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee looks pretty good too. Yeah, and Georgia. I'm just not. I'm really interested to see how Georgia's going to run through that gauntlet of a schedule because their schedule is absolutely brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
About time.
Yeah. So yeah, it's about time. About time they get a tough schedule. So we'll see. Anyways, Reagan, we need to take a quick break and then we come back. We've already discussed obviously the recap. We've discussed a lot of the rising stars: Zy Alexander, PJ Woodland, Juwan Johnson. Obviously, Gabe Relaford looked really good Saturday night as well. So a lot of guys that are rising that could potentially change what this season looks like. But some injury updates we need to get to. We'll get to those right after this.
5-Star Hero, your intro and outro music for the Tigers Avenue show. They ain't ready for that LSU. Go check out all his other music on all the major platforms. Don't forget to follow him on Instagram at Saints Anthem and at Twitter at One Nation Doty. Don't forget to check out his Facebook page for all his Saints and LSU merchandise. Can't get any better than Sarah Klein Stevens, attorney at law. Her firm focuses on the needs of the elderly and maintaining their dignity throughout the process. Here for you, here for your family. Sarah Klein Stevens, attorney at law.
Right back at it here in the Tigers Avenue. Last 2 segments here. Obviously, here's the worst news coming out of the Nicholls State game. Jacoby and Gilroy, your best interior defensive lineman, without question, has torn his Achilles and is out for the season. Just a really, really, really unfortunate blow for the Tigers in a game that is meaningless.
Yeah.
in a game that is meaningless. And again, this is why so many young guys got reps. The trend of college football is that we're moving away from games like this, and I'm ready for it because I'm tired. Like it frustrates me to no end that we lose a guy who is so crucial to this team with a season-ending injury against this team. It really sucks. It really does. I hate it for Jacobian. Here's the good news. Brian Kelly did mention that they're probably going to pursue a medical red shirt. Potentially will pursue a medical red shirt for Jacobian Gilroy. So maybe we get him back for another year, a sixth season for Jacobian. That way he can, put a stamp on his career at LSU because this is just a devastating blow. It's similar. It's not entirely similar to John Emery, but it's close. A guy who has been faithful to LSU, a guy who could have easily left and gone and played at another school and started and got a lot of playing time. Instead, chose to stick it out through the coaching change, has grinded, has improved, has gotten better, comes back for a final season and has a season-ending injury in the game in game 2. It just stinks. You hate it for the guy.
Yeah.
Glad that he has the chance to still come back and redo things again. But it's just a big blow. It really is. He's your best interior defensive lineman. You got bodies there, but you just lack experience. You do. Zach, guys that you look to now, immediately the first few guys that come to name, obviously Gio Paez, he's your other starter. You need him to step up. Other guys that you really need to take a bigger role, who need to take that are going to have to take on more reps. Sean Washington, Jalen Lee are guys that certainly come to name. JVR Suggs, the transfer. And then maybe just maybe a freshman can come in and contribute in a big way. Brian Kelly has bragged on Ahmad Bro, and maybe Ahmad Bro can come in and make it an impact in the absence of Jacobian Gilroy. Regardless, though, you're going to have guys step up because we just don't have SEC experience with these guys. You just don't. I mean, you have veteran guys. Gio Paez, he's in his 6th year. JVR Suggs has played, this is his 3rd year. Jalen Lee, this is his 5th year. So you have experience, but you don't have SEC experience, and you don't have a lot of starts between them either. Gio Paez is his 6th year. Last night's game or Saturday's game was his 8th start of his career. It's his 6th year in college.
Yeah.
Like, it's just there's not a lot of experience. There's going to be a lot of growing pains to go through with this defensive line group without Jacobian. You got to have guys step up, and maybe some of your freshmen like Ahmad Bro and Dominic McKinley can make an immediate impact. Maybe Sean Washington, who had some flashes in fall camp. But, Zach, it really is just a wait and see. It really is.
Yeah.
You're not looking at it going, oh, this is the guy that's going to fill it in. It's really just going to be like, we got to rotate guys in and see who's the guy who steps up. That's where you're at right now with it. Who's going to be the guy? We'll have to wait and see on that. That's a huge development for LSU's defense. Here's a more positive, big-time development for – that's the negative. That's the worst. Here's the good news. Sage Ryan and Zy Alexander. Zy Alexander has come back healthy, as we've already talked about, had a fantastic night, looked great against Nicholls. Looked great. How does that translate against better competition? We'll see. But we know last year, Zy was your best corner. He was your best corner before the injury. So he looks like he's back into form. Brian Kelly, with confidence today in his press conference, is telling you that Sage Ryan is moving to safety. And everybody said, praise God, hallelujah. Praise God. He's finally going to play where he is supposed to play. He is finally going to, in his LSU career, play the position that he was a 5-star in high school. Finally. This is what so many LSU fans have been waiting on. He's going to safety, and it suits him better. It is where he is comfortable. You placed Sage Ryan at the wideout corner out of necessity. He's better at safety. He's better. It is where he's best at. So to have Zy Alexander come back to form and to put him in that position alongside Ashton Stamps, who's looking solid, with a freshman like P.J. Woodland, who is on the rise, and to place then Sage Ryan back in his more comfortable spot with Gilbert and with Jordan Allen back there in the safety position, you feel a lot better about that.
Yeah.
You can look at that and go, okay, this can be better than what it's been. This can be even better than what it has been. And Zach, honestly, your DBs have not played bad in the 2 games we've seen. They haven't. They have not gotten beat deep like they did last year. But because of the way that they've played and the way that they've done things, not to get beat deep, not to get the big play bust, there are things underneath for the other teams, which we saw with USC. Their 41-yard pass was a pass that was only 10 yards, and it was taken for 41 yards. It wasn't a deep shot. The only one play that I can come to mind where it was like, dang, we got beat a little bit, was the miraculous catch that Hudson made in the USC game.
And do you really call that even call that getting beat because he had to make the play that he made?
That's what I'm saying. The coverage was there.
Yeah.
He just made a phenomenal play. He made an abnormal, like
Sports
once in a
top
lifetime
10.
Sports Center top 10 play. Like sometimes you just gotta go, okay, like the coverage was there. That's the only time I can think of. And you don't really want to say he got beat.
No.
The guy just made the play. So I am very excited about the prospect of Sage going to safety and playing where he's most comfortable, finally, and Zy plugging back in. This is my point in saying that Nicholls State, like you gotta think bigger picture here, okay? Now, each game, you got to focus in each game. But for fans, we can look big picture. We want the players to look one game at a time. But big picture for fans, against Nicholls State, you got a guy healthy who's back, comes in, plays a great game. You're going, okay, we got him back. Now we can move Sage to safety. We can plug him in. We get to look and see what that looks like this weekend against South Carolina, a very winnable game. And if it works really well, you can try it again against UCLA. And you can build on that and improve your defense. That's what these games are for. That's what they're for. And that's exactly what you did. So I'm very excited. Brian Kelly seemed very confident in Zy Alexander's ability to come back in, play that spot. And it sounds like this weekend you're going to see Sage at safety and Zy at the DB. Like straight up. That's what Brian Kelly said. Straight up. So I'm excited to see that. That's one thing that you positive that he has gotten healthy in an injury report. Right, this is an injury update. He's gotten healthy. He came back and looked good. Here's some other things, Zach. Garrett Dellinger, who did not play all of last week, did not play. He'll be back in this week. He's ready to go, according to Brian Kelly. Chris Hilton's day-to-day, and who's the other guy? Oh, Kyle Parker, questionable, I think is what he said. So we'll see. We'll see. But the prospect of having Sage at safety is much better than having him at the wideout. So I'm excited about that, Zach.
Yeah, I would agree. And obviously, you hope to see if Chris Hilton will come back. That'd be, I think, a huge boost for LSU. Just another weapon for LSU to be able to have. And, we talked so much, obviously, before the season and during Garrett's time that he was able to play in mop-up duty, gunslinger, right? Well, you haven't had the horses to be able to do that, right? You haven't had a guy that's able to rip the top off of a defense and just a speedster that you can throw it deep to. Chris Hilton gives you that.
Yep.
So, I think we'll be able to see more deep shots potentially with Chris Hilton back if he's able to play this weekend. And I really feel like you need to get Xavion Thomas going too, because obviously he's a guy that could potentially take the top off of a defense. So I'd like to see that more. Obviously, hopefully Chris Hilton, injury-wise, is good to go. So, and then having Garrett Dellinger back obviously will be huge as well. I just really hope, and we'll talk about it on Thursday, I just really hope that we can get the run game going somewhat and just have one of these running backs show out for once in the season. I know it's early, but I would love to see that. We'll see. We'll talk about it on Thursday, though, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to address Danny Girl's comment there.
Oh,
Look,
she said, sorry. She said, sorry, guys, Sage ain't it anywhere. He played safety last week. And Zai at cornerback had only a small amount of snaps, but Sage played most of the game, and Zai had more tackles in limited snaps.
Danny, look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think Sage is the greatest player out there when you put him at safety. That's not what I'm saying, okay? I do want you to understand that. I'm not saying he is the greatest thing ever when you move.
He's Jamal Adams.
Right. I'm not saying he's Eric Reed back there or anything. Obviously not. But it is where he is more comfortable. And also I would say you don't want your safety to have more tackles than your DB because the DB plays closer to the line. You when your safety is racking up a lot of tackles, you got other problems.
Yeah.
Okay? Unless you're Major Burns, and that's you're playing close.
That's your role. You're playing close to the ball.
Like a Jamal Adams.
Yeah.
But he's not that, right? You don't want him racking up a lot of tackles. That's not good for you. But it is more comfortable for Sage in that position. It is more comfortable for him there. Zai is better out on the deep side. It is where they're most comfortable, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying we're going to see some like it's 2011. We got
straight ballers,
Matthew and like Trey White out there and all these guys, Eric Reed and Dante Jackson. I'm not saying that, okay? It will be better, I think, than what we have seen because,
especially in the long run for the season. Yeah,
right. Because Sage he just is not good in man coverage. He just gets beat a lot. He plays way better when he's out in center field. He plays better. Again, I'm not saying he's the greatest. He's more comfortable out there, though. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but it is better than what we've had. So I'm excited. I'm more excited, Danny, if this makes sense, about Zai than I am about Sage.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Lastly, Zach, areas to improve on. I have one, Zach, that you may not be expecting. Okay, I think it's relative to what everybody is going to say. it's relevant to what everybody's going to say. Obviously, I think everybody's going to say it's the run game. And I would agree. But here is where we have failed the run game. Our tight ends have got to do better.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
About blocking.
Yeah.
It is not in 2 games. There's been too many times that the tight ends have had missed assignments, and it's cost the run game. Okay? It's got to get better. You saw against USC following Kamorian Pimpton's 14-yard catch. You rush up to the line. It's 3rd and 1. He whiffs on a block. John Emery, you look at the film, the O-line did their job, okay? I'm going to go ahead and say this. The O-line has not been bad when it's come to the rushing game. They have not. The hole for John Emery to run through on 3rd and 1 in that play could not have been any bigger. Kamorian Pimpton whiffed on the block and was tackled. He got John Emery tackled from behind. You get stopped a yard back. You move on. When you've watched the film, the run blocking has not been as bad from the offensive line as one would expect. The tight ends have been bad, and it's got to improve. I will say this. Obviously, Kamorian Pimpton didn't play this weekend, but, man, Mason Taylor has no excuse. This is your 3rd year in the program, man. You know the expectations. You're the veteran guy. You got to make the plays. And there were times against Nicholls he didn't make the play. In fact, there was a picture circling on social media of a play when everybody had their assignments and there was a lot of room to run. There was a lot of room to run. Mason chip blocked the defensive end. There may have been a miscommunication somehow, but he should have gotten the defensive end. He only chip blocked. He goes up to the linebacker, and the defensive end kind of runs free and tackles our guy for I think it was a minimal gain, maybe even no gain, and there was a lot of room to run. The receivers were blocking downfield. The O-line washed it down to the right. We were going left. It was all there. Mason Taylor missed the block. We got to do better from our tight ends. If we're going to run these 12 personnel packages, these 13 personnel packages, it's got to be better. It's got to be. Because it hasn't been good recently. It hasn't been. I will also give a pass because Garrett Dellinger wasn't playing. That doesn't mean you can't outplay Nicholls without Garrett Dellinger. But I'll say Garrett Dellinger wasn't there, okay? Brian Kelly, though, also says if they're going to stack the box, we're going to throw the ball. If they don't want us to run, we'll throw it. And against the teams like Nicholls State, with your receivers, it's going to work a lot. And it did. It did work a lot. We talked about it earlier. They checked out of a bunch of runs, and they threw the ball okay. Against USC, you average over 4 yards a carry. Do I think the running game needs to get better? Yes. Do I think it's been as bad as what everybody's making out to be? No. I think there's a few things that need to get cleaned up. And I think we can we haven't been balanced the way we should. And I think that's part of everybody's tiff with it. It just hasn't looked very balanced with the run game and the passing game. And everybody's like, we thought we were just going to dominate on the run game. But it hasn't looked that way yet. It needs to improve. It does need to improve. I'm not saying it's been great because clearly it has not. But I will say this. I don't think it's as much on the offensive line as what everybody's making it out to be. I think the tight ends have got to do a lot better job than what they have been. That's my point on that.
The area that I will say needs improvement is where you put Harold Perkins. We discussed it before the show. In the Nicholls game, he was the lowest graded player on LSU's team. And we know what he's capable of. I just don't think that it's working well with this transition to being this 3-down linebacker, in the middle of the field, in the box. Like I feel like he needs to be in a role where he is spying the quarterback or rushing the passer. Like either way, he needs to be a spy or he needs to be rushing the passer. And as you mentioned before the show, Reagan, Witt has been perfectly fine.
Speaking of rising stars.
Yeah, speaking of rising stars, Witt has been perfectly fine in that position. So I want to see, and I don't know, obviously different coordinator, different defensive coordinator. It didn't go well last year. And yes, Perkins had a pretty good year. Like if you compare his freshman year to his sophomore year, not much of a difference. Perkins had a pretty good game versus USC. He was your leading tackler. But if we want to see, if we have the expectation of what Harold Perkins is going to be and what he did his freshman year, he's going to have to go back to that role. Because the role he's in right now, we're not going to see that as much. Yeah. So do they want to make that change? I don't know. We'll find out. The other thing I want to mention, Reagan, is, and this is kind of obvious, but, I don't think the punting has been terrible, but it hasn't been great.
Yeah.
So we definitely need to improve on figuring out both of the punters' roles, and just improve on consistency. And I think, that's because that can change a game. Being able to reverse the field can change a game. And we just need a guy back there on punting duty that can be able to flip the field. And maybe that just doesn't happen this year. I'm thinking that's probably gonna be the case. That's just not gonna happen this year. But they need to work on getting better in the punting game. Work on figuring out if they need to go back all the way back to his freshman year and put Harold Perkins back in that role.
Just let him do what he does good.
Let him do what he does best. And
put Witt in there.
Your team's going to be better for it. What's a better way to help out your secondary? Put your best pass rusher rushing the passer. I mean, Harold Perkins is your best pass rusher, and we don't hardly ever send him.
Yeah. I will say this, Zach. I will say this, though. Nicholls wasn't throwing the ball that much.
No.
At all.
That's correct. And that's a huge deal. I completely understand that, and you're right. That's a huge part of the context. But, as we get further on these games, if you want to help your secondary out, help them come along a little bit better, I just really feel like Blake Baker's got to – and I feel like Blake Baker can. I know he can scheme it, but Blake Baker has got to create opportunities for Harold Perkins to be able to make plays in the backfield.
We want Perk to do what Perk can do.
Yeah. We want him to do what he does.
We do.
So, yeah, areas to improve on. Hopefully LSU can build off of some positives from this weekend, even though for the fan base it seemed like mostly a negative weekend. Tigers get the dub. Some rising stars with true freshmen and even some guys that are making their way back from injury, specifically Zai Alexander, some guys changing roles. Obviously Sage Ryan looks like he's going to be changing his role. Could potentially Harold Perkins go back to the role that he had his freshman year? We'll have to wait and see. But Reagan, obviously we're going to preview all of that on Thursday.
Yep, absolutely. We sure will. Appreciate all you guys getting in here and commenting and giving your input as always. Tigers are moving forward. Got a big game this weekend. South Carolina. Zach, honestly, I would love to go and experience that atmosphere. I wish I could, but the Tigers will be there. College game day, 11 a.m. kick. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, we'll give you our preview this coming Thursday. So be looking for that, and we'll see you next time here in the Tigers Avenue. 5 Star here, take us out. Peace.
Who that 5 Star?